A common critique you'll often hear about long-running battle manga, mostly pointed towards the likes of Naruto, is how some themes introduced earlier on will be forgotten about or contradicted the further the story moves along. Now, as to my feelings on that, it varies from story to story so long as there isn't too much retroactive damage done, but I don't consider it to be a flaw on principle alone. It's just the nature of manga production. Most mangaka tend not to plan very far ahead, and on top of that, if your story's been going on for a good amount of years and you're getting older, your worldviews and interests may change. As you're shifting from arc to arc, the dynamic of your story will ebb and flow in different directions than you initially expected, as you find yourself wanting to explore and experiment with new concepts. Some of the greatest stories ever told have benefited from this factor. All this to say that I've garnered some appreciation for the shorter stories over the years. A little more tightness, a little more consistency. Much unlike my video scripts. Jigokuraku, otherwise known as Hell's Paradise, is brought to us by Jigokuraku, who I honestly hadn't heard of before, but he's no rookie. He's been around, primarily as an editor. The manga ran from January 2018 and concluded in January 2021. The anime, for some strange reason, hasn't been doing so well. People have issues with the animation apparently. I don't know, I don't care, I think it looks fine, but what do I know? The second season has been announced, so hopefully I can see my series done justice. If not, I'm gonna try to convince you guys to give the manga a read. Just a little spoiler-free recommendation, as I point out the highlights of why it's worth your time. Set in the Edo period, the age of the shogun, samurai, and shinobi, the story opens on the execution of our protagonist known as Gabimaru the Hollow. Various methods are used, such as beheading, burning, and even quartering, all to no avail. Shinobi from the Iwagako clan have developed the ability to become harder than stone. Although he claims to wish for death as he has no attachment to this world, his reflexes betray his words. Pointed out by the high-ranking samurai Sagiri, who's in charge of overseeing the execution, she provides Gabimaru the opportunity to get a pardon. The shogun is putting an expedition together comprised of convicts to journey to a newly discovered island in search of the rumoured elixir of life. So 10 criminals, each accompanied by a member of the Asaemon Samurai, must survive and compete to obtain the elixir, for there can only be one pardon granted. Sagiri manages to convince Gabimaru to join, because no matter how much he tries to deny it, the once cold and empty assassin wants nothing more than to return home to his beloved wife. So we stumble freely into one of our major themes that will run throughout the entire story. Once the battle royale formula subsides and the true mystery of the island slowly drip feeds us with more and more questions, the characters are forced to confront and come to terms with the parts of themselves that they reject in order to survive. An inner turmoil that resides within each one. Gabimaru, being the top-ranking shinobi, was forced to marry the clan leader's daughter due to status obligations. Gabimaru, only seeing it as another mission to complete, slowly falls for the naive and innocent nature of the young woman and attempts to walk away from the shinobi life so that he can be with her forever, resulting in the chief's ambush that leads to his execution. Stuck in two minds, surrendering himself to the fact that he just isn't allowed to live a normal life, versus his desire for that normal life. This cognitive dissonance has him floundering between the two paths. Weaving into our second theme, what makes us who we are and what defines us. Sagiri, our secondary protagonist, who's one of the 10 samurai tasked with monitoring the criminals, faces this issue time and time again throughout the story. She's ranked the lowest of the Asaemon, not due to her skill set, in fact she is one of the strongest, but because she's a woman, she's meant to be living a quiet life away from the battlefield, and to give birth to the next leader of the clan. A fact constantly reiterated to her from her peers, but speaking to the strength of her character, she chooses this lifestyle because she refuses to live ignorantly on the deaths of those her family must execute. She'd rather have the blood on her own hands, but her philosophy gets tested even further when she finds herself not only forming a bond with Gabimaru, but gaining affinity towards the rest of the criminals as the mystery of the island unravels and has them all forced to work together for the sake of survival as the lines between law and chaos, hero and criminal, becomes even more blurred. Yuji Kaku's core idea behind the series was having people from opposite walks of life being trapped together, and not only does it work within the realms of the law and the criminals, but also the infighting within those factions. A lot of the criminals have juxtaposed ideologies, and the political spectrum of the Asaemon faction are on full display. along with the shogun being written to be this childish, id-fueled brat. And this is all brilliantly incorporated into the Tao-based power system. Every aspect of this story is built on contrast, and those oppositions coming closer and closer together to find a middle path. The more centered you are as a person is the stronger you will become. This is typically used in fiction, but only for the one power-up. It's usually as simple as, this is your weakness, now come to terms with that weakness, and then that's it, the arc is done, very quickly within one chapter or so, just because it's a way for the character to get a quick power-up. In Jigokuraku, it's an entire process that is introduced at the start and only comes full circle towards the end. It is the entire point of this story. The many facets, dimensions, and trial and error this takes to perfect. These characters will stumble and fail, but they will continue to adapt and learn. Though this is still a shonen, so the pace is a lot faster than the likes of Vagabond or Berserk. I'd say it matches Vinland Saga pre-farming arc, but what it does have in common with all of them is the debate of what it means to be alive. If you are completely numb to everything, truly void of joy, does it mean anything to pretend? Can you emulate those feelings and habits until they become true? Of course, there's the old adage of people only die when they are forgotten. Is it considered living if we are in servitude to someone else? Jigokuraku has fun using its many characters and the dynamics between them to explore these ideas. Lastly, the characters are just a lot of fun. The story gets very grim, but it manages to maintain a solid sense of humor even in the most dire of situations. Not so much so that it kills any tension, like many other shonen are guilty of. There's a lot that I'm not touching on just for the sake of you being able to experience it yourself. But if anything I've said sounds interesting to you, please give it a read.